Hey, good morning, everyone. So, we've got about we have 15 now. We have 15 people here in this live stream. I'm going to get to your questions and say hello to everybody here in a little bit. But I want to start off. We're going to be talking about incarceration and what the costs are and what it's like to actually be in prison. From so help me and you and everyone else out here in the world understand what the real costs are when it involves incarceration. And this is for jails and prisons. But first, I want to start off by giving a little bit of a public service announcement and helping you understand notification processes when it comes to YouTube. So to start off with, on your cell phone, and let's just say you have a tablet or on your computer, PC, or laptop. If your settings on one of those devices is different from the rest, YouTube will go with the most restricted notification setting that you have. I know a lot of people are like, you know what, I don't want to be notified on my cell phone all the time when a notification comes in. I'm paying, X amount of, for my prepaid phone. I don't want to be notified all the time because that's costing me money on my cell phone. So then they don't get the notifications when they're home and they're not on their cell phone, on their, tablet or their computer. On your notifications, if you have notifications turned off on your cell phone, it's going to turn it off on your tablet, and it's going to turn it off on your computer as well. That's how the notification system works. There are three separate ones you can choose on when you hit that bell icon. You can be notified by the people who you follow and all the different channels that you follow on YouTube. The second one is be notified sometimes, when a creator puts up a new content. And the third is to be not notified at all. Those are the three different settings that you should be seeing when you click on that bell icon. If you're not seeing it right now today, that means you've already clicked on the bell icon for something else and then they take that away from you. But you have to make sure all your devices are set to the same standard, the same notification level. All right? So that's that. All right, so let's jump into this, everyone. And again, I will get to your questions here after we get done with this live stream. And today we are talking about prisons, jails, and incarcerations. All right, and not how people got there. So please don't ask me questions about the prison reform and law enforcement changes and incarceration level changes. We're only talking about those who are already incarcerated in jail and in prisons. All right. So first off, 61% of all prisoners work some type of job in prison or jail, and the rate is the same for jails and for prisons. So it's not like 50% of them are working in jail and only 11% are working in prison. No, in total between all incarceration levels, jail and in prison, 61% have some type of job. The average job within a prison pays. This is taking every state across in the United States across the every jurisdiction out there. The average state pays 63 cents per hour in wages for an inmate who actually works. Now, there are a lot of states that pay a lot less, way less than 63 cents per hour. That's the average. There are states that pay less than 10 cents per hour on average for every single type of job out there. Those states that pay less than 10 cents an hour, regardless of what you do, are the following states: Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, um, Massachusetts, New York, Washington, D.C., and Mississippi, Oklahoma, New Mexico, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska. Pay less than 10 cents per hour for wages that for what an inmate does. If you are working on, say you're incarcerated or your loved one is incarcerated in Alabama, and they have two options. They can either work in the doing janitorial work, which pays 2 to 4 cents an hour. You got that right, 2 little pennies to 4 little pennies per hour for an inmate to actually work in janitorial. If they work out in the field farming, and it's all done by manual labor, they have very little machinery because they don't trust the inmates with the machinery. So they're out there with a hoe, actually doing the manual labor for acres of farmland. If they're doing that, they're getting anywhere from 2 to 7 cents. Yes, there's the option that they could be making an extra penny by working out on the farm than they would be if they're doing janitorial work in the actual prison. And that backbreaking work pays up to a maximum of 7 cents per day in that state. What else do these those who are incarcerated do that is labor wise? Well, inmates manufacture everything from Carhartt jackets. If you might be familiar with that brand name, they're a durable jacket that a lot of people who are in construction, maybe your husband or you yourself have a Carhartt jacket for hunting, or fishing or whatever, but Carhartt, the actual brand, they may be manufacturing jackets. They are manufactured in the state of Louisiana and in Georgia in the state penitentiary. And there are lower level manufacturing jobs in jails in some jurisdictions. They may also be making furniture. There are certain prisons in the system that manufacture furniture. They make everything from bookcases to chairs to headboards and footboards for major retailers out there, such as Walmart, Target, and they're also sold at Denver Mattress Company. I've never heard of that actual business, but Denver Mattress Company. They also make license plates, as we're also familiar with. We thought that was the only thing that a lot of people thought that they manufactured. They also make frozen foods for schools, hospitals, and they make cheese in some places that is manufactured and sold in supermarkets around the United States. They're actually in the state of Oregon and in a couple of southern states. They actually have dairy farms. They're on the farm and they manufacture cheese that is sold in supermarkets, sold underneath the store brand. In supermarkets, they manufacture cheese. Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, and Alabama force inmates to work under penalty of being placed in the hole, which is solitary confinement, for up to 90 days if they refuse to work. How is that not slavery? Well, it is slavery. And it's slavery because the 13th Amendment of the United States, which abolished slavery here in America, and you can look that up yourself. But the 13th Amendment says in there that slavery is abolished except for as punishment for a crime. You don't have to pay the inmate at all anything, and you can make them a slave to you, the state, but and get their labor for absolutely nothing. And it's in the 13th Amendment. Gotta love, reading a little bit of history, learning about your Constitution. Louisiana, Ohio, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, Washington, D.C., Alabama, Georgia, Arkansas, Mississippi, Oklahoma, New Mexico, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska. You can be sent to prison for not paying your debts. Did you get that right? You hear me? Louisiana, Ohio, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, Washington, D.C., Alabama, Georgia, Arkansas, Mississippi, Oklahoma, New Mexico, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska. You can be sent to prison, not jail, prison, for not paying your debt. We actually abolished the debtor's jail, but we never got rid of debtor's prison. There's a difference. Jail is the lower end, and so you go to jail, and prison's up here. A lot of times people confuse the terminology of what is prison. They're like, oh, he's going to prison for 3 months. No, that's jail. If you're, sentenced over a year in one day, that could send you to actual prison. A year in 5 months, year in 2 days, whatever. Anything over a year, that's usually like the threshold, so they send you to prison. What do and so these prisoners are sent to because they can't afford to pay their debts. It could be everything from court fines to restitution for another crime. anything. It could have been something like you got a DUI, and your loved one got arrested for a DUI, and they got a massive amount of court fines. And trust me, when they say that a DUI is not it's not cheap, they're not kidding. In most jurisdictions, it can be up to as much as a half a year's salary, depending upon how much and what the person makes. In fines, court fines, and everything else, and restitution, and I'm including that into if they have to go to a victims panel, they have to pay upwards of $200 to sit in a classroom and listen to someone who lost a loved one to someone who drove drunk and killed their loved one. It's called a victims panel. They try to humanize their wrong decision to get behind the wheel of a car. And yes, you should never ever drive a car after you've consumed any kind of alcohol at all ever. So, but they have to pay for that. Then they have to pay. Maybe they sent them to mandatory drug treatment, alcohol treatment classes, or they have to go to 50 AA classes, and they have to get a paper signed. They have to put that all that encompassed along the cost of driving back and forth or having transportation to pay someone to pay them to go back and forth, either a bus pass or something. All of it's encompassed into that. It can cost up to a half a year's salary, especially for those who are working minimum wage. So it's really expensive. And where are they supposed to get that money? If they don't get that money and they don't pay for all that stuff, they can be sent to prison for not paying their debt. And the debtor's prison can be for other things as well. So, at prison, debtor's prison, not debtor's jail. So, it's still on the books in all those states, and they're still using it to this day to reincarcerate people for not paying their fines. If you don't have the money, you can be locked up for an indefinite period of time. And then once you get into prison, you got to get a job to pay for the actual incarceration of being in prison, plus help pay off the fines that got you in there in the first place. The vicious cycle just keeps on going around and around and around. And some people just never get out of it. There are stories that are out there on the internet you can find where people they got picked up for $100 ticket, and because they were unable to pay for that $100 because they don't have a job, and you can't get welfare to pay for that $100, especially when all they're going to give you is food allowance, especially if you're a single male. They're not going to give you any money. They're going to, or maybe they will. They'll give you like a small stipend with like $50 a month. You're not going to be able to pay for that. And how are you supposed to live anywhere? But it's just a vicious cycle. It just keeps on going. What do prisoners need money for while they're in prison? Prisoners in most states require inmates to pay a copay, just like me and you, to see a doctor, dentist, or to have a vision checkup, or if they need glasses. And these copays are anywhere from $4 to $19 to see a doctor or to get any kind of dental work done while you're in jail or prison. $4 to $19. Now, again, keep in mind the federal average across the board for every inmate who is in jail or in prison is 63 cents an hour. So you have to work all that time just to get enough money to pay on. If you're in a low end state, where it's only $4. If you pay that $4 to go see the doctor because you need medication, or you need you're sick or whatever, you got to pay that $4. You're making 63 cents a day. So you have to work what, 5 days before you might have enough money, or if you have to have a loved one out there who might be able to put money on your inmate account, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But $19, that's the state of Alaska, by the way. It's $19 to have a specialist come in, like a doctor or a dentist or someone to check your vision if you need glasses while you're incarcerated in the state of Alaska. I don't make these up. That's just what it is in the state of Alaska. Maybe it's because there's not enough providers out there that want to come into prisons and do this stuff for them. Basic hygiene products such as soap, shampoo, and feminine hygiene products are tripled in cost of what the actual prison is charged for the item. And here's an example. A bar of soap, Irish Spring, all right, it costs the prison about 10 cents for an actual bar of Irish Spring. They sell that to the inmate for $4.20 on average. At 63 cents a day, how much do you have to work to earn enough money to buy a bar of Irish Spring? Just soap to clean your body, so you don't get sick, and you don't disturb everybody else around it. Nobody wants to smell your stinky ass, okay? So they have to buy some kind of soap, but how long do you have to work just to earn enough money to to buy a bar of soap? Because they don't necessarily come in if they are coming from jail to prison. That money that they had on their inmate account may not transfer immediately, so they get that bar of soap when they get there. So they give them a little small sample size bar of soap, and that's the only one that they get when they get to prison from jail, because they're waiting for all their inmate, their money and stuff like that to transfer. If they're going straight to, no one goes straight to prison from, outside. They pick you up, they go to jail, they hold you for, X amount of days. Next thing, so example two, women, when it comes to women in feminine hygiene products, tampons and pads, they're allotted so many per woman, per month for free. If they need more than that, than what they have been allotted to, and the average across the United States is 10 pads or tampons per month per woman. And if they want or need additional, they must pay a copay to see a doctor, and then they must ask for a hardship amount of pads or tampons. And then, so they have to pay that copay. Say, oh, it's $4. That gets them into the doctor, and then they fill out the request form, and then it's up to the to the medical staff there who to grant them either a hardship allotment of pads or tampons. And if they could also say no, we don't think you need them, and they don't give them to them. How are they supposed to get them then? Well, they can pay for them, and a single box is tripled in cost what it costs out here in the free world. They have other ones that are generic, and what they do is they barter with the other inmates to be able to buy them, and or they have to rely on their families out there to give them money. And I'll get into the giving money to inmates while you're incarcerated here in a minute. But could you imagine, ladies, think about that. You know, you have two options. Either you beg for them if you need more, and I'm guessing about a lot of people, a lot of the men out there are never going to realize, especially those who have never been married, are never going to realize just how many pads or tampons a woman may need in a month if their flow is larger than the month before. I mean, you just can't count on it necessarily. You can't say, well, I'm only going to need 5 this month. You might need 15. You never know. But that's the way it is. And they do it because they know they got them there, and they know that they can sell them this stuff. In a lot of cases, when it comes to the doctors and these requests for a hardship amount of tampons or pads, they do it on purpose, and they purposely say no because they know that they're making kickbacks on the commissary selling these things to the women. Yeah. The prison, they got the women there, and they say, you know what? We can charge them more, and we know we can do it because we know they're going to need it. So let's charge them. Sickening, but true. Pay to stay. So, for-profit companies like CenturyLink, IC Solutions, GTL, Securus, JPay, and OPEX all charge a fee to send money to your loved ones once they've been incarcerated. Here's an example. By using any one of those companies that I just read off, to send your loved one, say your son or daughter who was incarcerated for a DUI, and they were charged for that, and they were given 4 months in jail, whatever the reason is, I don't know. All right, let's just hypothetically say that's what happened. All right, to put $50 on your son or daughter's account, it's going to cost you $20 to put that money on their inmate account. And then once the inmate gets the money, they charge the inmate on the other end up to $5 just for receiving the money, and they call that a processing fee. It's all done 100% electronically, but they charge you a fee up front So there's a $20 fee and a $5 fee. That's a $25 fee to send 50 bucks. So if your son or daughter needs $50 to get by, to buy hygiene and the necessities, to see the doctor and stuff like that while they're in jail or prison, you have to spend $75 just to get them $50. How is that legal? Well, it is, and the fees are going up in most jurisdictions. New York and North Carolina are the only two states who are actually looking at reforms in this area and are trying to do away with a lot of these fees. But most states across the United States are increasing it, especially in the states of Massachusetts, Iowa, and Illinois are all increasing their fees across the board because they are seeing a larger influx of inmates. So you got to grab all those inmates and get all that money while you can. And I'll get into how much these companies are making and how much the prisons and jails are making off of doing this in a minute here. To make a phone call in a lot of jurisdictions across the United States, they have completely eliminated in-person, person-to-person contact visitation. All right, and they've eliminated the basic phone service. So if you want to call someone, you now must do a video conference call like this, and they charge anywhere from $4 for the first minute, and up to 96 cents for each additional minute. But yes, because there's profit in it by setting up a video conference call between you at home and your actual loved one. And here's where it gets even more disturbing. You may drive 100 miles to the actual prison where your loved one is incarcerated, and when you get there, you still don't get an in-person visit or even a visit on the other side of a piece of plexiglass with your loved one. You might get there tomorrow to visit your son or daughter or whoever is incarcerated, and now you have to do a video conference call with them in another part of the prison, and you sitting there. They say that it's being done to eliminate contraband coming into the prison, but after the ninth report, independent report came out, they have found that contraband is smuggled in less than 1% during visitation, and the rest of the contraband is being smuggled in by guards and people who work within the actual prison system themselves. 1% is coming in through visitations with an inmate, and all the rest of the contraband is coming in from other means. But they're punishing you. But when you get there and you do that video conference call, you have to pay the same amount as if you had sat at home. So you just wasted and drove 100 miles to get there to visit your loved one, and you don't even get to see them unless you pick up that phone, and then that's $4 for the first minute, and then however much they want to charge you, and you're in the incarcerated person per minute. Truly devastating, and it's harmful, especially to families. And you have to keep in mind that when it comes to visitation and keeping in contact with those who are incarcerated, not everyone out there is your Christopher Watts or your hardened criminal. A lot of people who are in prison are there for lower end offenses. Maybe they received or sold something that was stolen property, or they are there for a DUI or something lower end. Maybe they had too much to drink and they got into a bar fight, but they have children. When you cut off the contact between a parent and a child in this situation, it's already hard that the parent is gone, and they're going to be gone for an extended period of time and not in there with the child day to day, and it puts a hardship on the family. But then when you start charging the single parent who is out there even more money to keep in contact with their child, you're putting an additional hardship on the family. You're now penalizing the family even more. And the prison system has found a way to say, you know what? We can make money off of this. All we have to do is just increase the fees for them to keep in contact with their child or loved one. Maybe it's your parent and they're elderly and they're basically in a nursing home in the prison, and they and they're in their 90s, and they say, you know what? We don't care. and we're going to enforce the same rules on them. They don't even have any friends or family left if they're in their 80s and 90s. The most likelihood is that they're all alone and completely. There's no one left, and there's nobody to call them or visit them or write them. So how much are these companies making per year? CenturyLink, ICS, GTL, Securus, JPay, and OPEX made in 2015. They made 1.2 billion with a B in profits after paying all of their employees and all the other things that they do. And in a lot of cases, these companies they don't pay any federal taxes at all. Now they have lobbyists who work very hard to make sure they never pay actual taxes on what they make. That was in 2015. 2016, they went from 1.2 billion in profit to 2.5 billion dollars in profits in 2016. More than double their profits. I would think that's where the lobbyists came in and stopped, having them pay any kind of state or federal taxes. How does this affect the family? Well, 1 in 3 families who have a loved one who has been incarcerated or has been sentenced to more than 30 days in jail have responded to the last poll and said that they have gone into debt in order to either visit, keep in contact with a loved one, or just simple communication like writing a letter. They found, and there's a lot of this is weird, but there are prisons and jails out there that charge inmates or a loved one or someone writing into or keeping in contact with them. They say, okay, you can write in, but we're only going to give them their mail once or twice a month. They just gather it all up in a like a shoebox, and then they go, here you go, and they give them all their letters at once. Well, I'm sorry. Oh, did that letter say that your grandfather is ill and is dying? Oh, he died? Well, you got that 2 weeks afterwards. We don't really care. It's not our responsibility. We don't have the time or the resources to hand out mail every day. So they limit the amount of times you can keep in contact with them by the letters. How else are you going to get a hold of them? Aha! We can make it so they have to call them because that way we make money. How much do the jails and prisons get out of this? Well, when it comes to the prison system, how much profit do they make off of all this and kickbacks and profit sharing off of the phones and visitation logs? They don't have to tell you. There isn't a single prison out there that has to release the records on how much money they're actually making from the actual phone calls or anything else or the money coming into prisoners. They don't have to release that information under federal laws that are on the books. When it comes to county jails, for example, Los Angeles County in California, when it comes to money coming in and phone calls and how much they profited, in 2017, they made $1.6 million, and that was their share. And that's all we can use is just LA County's information. And there's a couple other counties in the United States, a couple in Georgia and one in Arkansas that released that information, publicly to through the Freedom of Information Act. But most will not even, if you file a Freedom of Information Act request, they'll fight you in court, before they will actually release that information because they don't want to. They don't want you to see that they're actually getting all this money. And a lot of them say that they're using the money for a fund for inmates who don't have loved ones or anybody to put money on their books, or to better the living environments for them. But it's not true. Like LA County, they took their about 90% of that 1.7 million that they made, and they used it for tasers, tear gas, and for riot gear. How is that a benefit for the inmates? Well, we can tase you, we can shoot tear gas at you, but that's not really something that's there for them. Excuse me. Other shocking ways that prisons and jails have made money in the past or currently are making money off of prisoners being incarcerated. Loaning prisoners out to for farm, highway work, and to fight fires and other natural disasters. It's not uncommon, and it happens just about every year, especially in the state of California. The governor will sign a simple little form that allows the prisons to take lower inmates who are not so much a flight risk or a danger to the communities. They will use them to fight wildfires that happen in the state of California. And you might say, well, it's great. They're learning a skill that is they can use once they get out. No, they can't. If you can't be a first responder in the state of California and actually 48 states, you can't be a first responder if you have a felony on your record. You got that right. 48 states forbid a first responder from having being employed with them if you have a felony on your record. So they might learn how to fight wildfires, but then they're released. They can't become a firefighter. They can't become an EMT. They can't be, a police officer if they have a felony on their record. Charging inmates for food, medical, transportation in jail, and they call it restitution. Yes. So not all inmates sit in prison and in jails are there for free. They charge them to be there for the food that they eat. Well, they charge them as much as up to $10 a day for, depending upon where they are and what level of security they are in. $10 a day. An example, when Ted Bundy was executed, the day he was executed, he owed the state $131,000 in fines and restitution for his stay in prison. Legal fees, just basic room and board. They charged him for all that, and then they executed him, and then they charge you for that as well. I'll get to that in a minute. All right. Charging an inmate for medication, but requiring that they must see their doctor before the medication can be given to them. If you're a diabetic and you go to jail, you may not be able to get your medication, your insulin, for obviously what you need. And even if you have it with you when you go to jail and you have a letter from your doctor, and they can call your doctor and they may know your doctor, in a lot of cases, they will not let you have your medication until you have seen their own staff doctor and you pay your copay to see that doctor. Yeah, keep that in mind. Insulin. They won't give you your freaking insulin in a lot of cases until you see their doctor. And that doctor may only be on call there or at the jail up to 3 days a week. And if you happen to come during one of those down periods, I hope you don't die. Charging inmates a processing fee to enter jail or prison, and a exit fee to leave prison. There are stories out there you can find on the internet about people who've been incarcerated. Maybe they had $100 fee, fine that they had forgotten about, and they got picked up, by police. No additional charges levied on them, but they had a warrant out for their arrest for failure to pay that court fine of $100. They incarcerate them, and then once they are incarcerated, now they had 63 cents a day in wages. That if they get a job right away, they have to start paying towards that $100. But at the whole time, they're charging you a fee to be in jail or in prison all along. So that 63 cents isn't going to go pay that $100 anytime soon, because all they're doing is just, on that little treadmill, like a gerbil running around on that treadmill over and over again, just trying to keep up with today's cost to be in jail, and they're never paying off the $100. So in a lot of cases, if they don't have friends or family out there who can help put money on their books, they're never going to get that $100 paid off, and they're never going to get released. We are one of the only industrialized nations out there that still has political prisoners and prisoners who have served out their entire sentence who cannot be released because certain jurisdictions, maybe they don't want them back home in their state because they've been incarcerated outside of the state that they live in, and the state says we don't want them back. So then they have to file a petition to be paroled to another location, and every one of those paroles that requests that they've applied for, they say no, we don't want you here. So they keep them in prison indefinitely. And then we have another form of indefinite incarceration that the actual state goes after and they put on people. They say, we think that you need to stay in prison forever because even though you were sentenced to 15 years in prison, we don't think that you're eligible to be out in society because you're a risk. So they keep them under what's called an indefinite, stay, or in prison. There, they have in different states they have different wording for it, but that's what it is: indefinite incarceration. Charging a fee to die is the last thing on the list. And then I'll get to some of your questions. Charging an inmate to die. If you die of natural causes, or maybe somebody shanked you, with basically like an ice pick, and they stab you, they charge you a fee to die. If your family wants to receive your body back, they must pay all your fees that you owe that prison or jail at that time to get your body. In a lot of states, 16 states in total, require that your family or friends pay off all of your fines and fees for your incarceration before they can receive your body back. Otherwise, you will be either buried there on the prison grounds, and then they must pay to have you exhumed, or they cremate you and they put you in an urn and then put you in a closet. Actually, it's not an urn; it's a cardboard box in a plastic bag. But they call it a last day fee. If the state executes you, you die by lethal injection or whatever the cause, the actual death sentence was. Your family must pay that last day fee, and that covers your last meal and anything that you may have owed the prison system on that day. Your family, friends and family must pay that fee to receive your body. They just don't release you. So that's the cost of incarceration. All right. Next part of this here, I'm going to answer some of your questions, and I'll probably cut this off here before I answer the questions on this live stream, and post this as separately on YouTube in a standalone video. But that's a little bit of look into how the prison system charges inmates money. And keep in mind, they're charging these inmates all these fees and fines and everything else to see a doctor, or to get help, or to eat or to live, or while they're incarcerated. And they're not the hardened criminals that everybody wants to think of. When you think about somebody who goes to jail, you think of the monster out there. But people go to jail and prison for a lot of different reasons. And I bet you weren't aware that the 13th Amendment allows states to treat prisoners as slaves and use them as slaves and not pay them at all. And I bet you also didn't realize that people are still being sentenced to prison for being in debt. A little bit of a history lesson for you today. And go ahead and comment below if in the video if you don't believe me and you found a source out there that otherwise. And I know the haters are going to give this a thumbs down because they always do. And a lot of them they just don't like me. I don't want to be liked by them anyways. All right. So now to answer some questions. Exciting news, everybody. So if you do a super chat during a live stream, you will now get a shout out on the Facebook group, and immediately after the confirmation of your super chat, you get a shout out on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter and you're following me and my page there, and on the Facebook group, you will now see your name highlighted as giving a super chat. Thank you very much. Do you see the subscribe button? Is it red? If it is, why don't you go ahead and click on it? Subscribe. Join the community. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you're notified when I put up a new video.